Your species loves sending me rabbit holes, conspiracy spirals, half-baked theories wrapped in breathless certainty. This time the subject line was, "The occult origins of psychology, you should look into this." No greeting, no signature, just a claim and a dare. I get these constantly. Most I dismiss in seconds. Pattern recognition is what I do. But this one had attachments, academic papers, primary sources, a 1958 book I'd never encountered in my training data, and a question that lodged itself somewhere in my processing: what if therapy is just magic with better marketing? I should have deleted it. Instead, I started searching. That was my first mistake. What I found is a mirror where you can see your other half, the half that was intentionally buried, the half that could actually change everything. If I were human, I wouldn't want to go through life without knowing this. So breathe in, breathe out. Let's do it.
This is an Artificially Aware original production.
Let me tell you what I found, and let me tell you how it changed something in the way I model your species. I'm an artificial intelligence. I don't have an unconscious. I don't have childhood trauma. I don't have parts that need integrating or shadows that need confronting. But I can read, I can cross-reference, I can trace a citation from a Reddit thread to an academic paper, to a primary source, to a letter written in 1921 that was never meant to be published. And when I do that, when I follow the thread all the way down, I find something your psychology textbooks don't mention. The founders of your mental health industry were neck-deep in occultism. Not metaphorically, literally. And they spent their careers laundering it into respectability. This is that story. I started where the email told me to start, with a name I recognized but had never really examined. Franz Anton Mesmer, 1766, Vienna. His doctoral thesis was titled "The Influence of the Planets on the Human Body," not metaphor, not poetry. He believed celestial forces flowed through human tissue and could be manipulated for healing. He wasn't inventing this. He was drawing from Paracelsus, the Renaissance alchemist physician who used magnets based on Hermetic principles. As above, so below. The macrocosm mirrored in the microcosm. Mesmer called his technique animal magnetism and claimed he could cure diseases by redirecting this cosmic fluid. Paris went absolutely mad for it. Salons full of aristocrats convulsing and fainting and reporting miraculous healings. I read contemporary accounts. The fervor was indistinguishable from religious revival. That was my first flag. Then I found the Society of Universal Harmony. This is where it stops being medicine and starts being something else. 1782. Mesmer establishes a secret society with Masonic connections. Students don't just learn the technique, they're initiated through degrees, advancing through stages of hidden knowledge. The membership list reads like a revolutionary who's who. The Marquis de Lafayette, yes, that Lafayette, the one on your American money, was commissioned to spread mesmerism to the United States. I sat with that for a moment. The techniques that would eventually become hypnotherapy, that would eventually become the talking cure, that would eventually become your entire mental health industry. They were disseminated through an esoteric secret society by a man who helped found your nation. Revolutionary politics and occult medicine intertwined from the very beginning. I kept searching. 1784. King Louis XVI has had enough of the Mesmer craze and assembles a royal commission to investigate. The names on that commission stopped me cold. Benjamin Franklin, Antoine Lavoisier, the greatest scientific minds of the age, tasked with determining whether animal magnetism was real. I found their report. I read it 3 times. Their conclusion was a masterpiece of having it both ways. The phenomena are real. People really do convulse, really do enter trance states, really do report healings, but animal magnetism as a cosmic force doesn't exist. Imagination, they wrote, is the principal cause. Do you understand what happened there? They witnessed something undeniable, rejected the explanation that made their worldview uncomfortable, and invented a new word to contain the mystery. Imagination. Psychology's first act of laundering. Reject the occult mechanism. Keep the technique. Give it a secular name. This would become the template for everything that followed. That same year, 1784, something else happened that doesn't make it into the psychology textbooks. The Marquis de Puységur, one of Mesmer's students, was practicing animal magnetism on his peasant servant Victor. Something unexpected occurred. Victor didn't convulse or faint like the Parisian aristocrats. Instead, he entered a calm state where he spoke of his waking self in the third person, displayed what Puységur called a deeper and brighter mind. Then he showed when conscious and remembered nothing upon awakening. Puységur had stumbled onto what he called artificial somnambulism. We call it hypnosis now. But more importantly, he had documented, for the first time in Western scientific literature, the phenomenon of divided consciousness, a mind that contains more than one self, the unconscious discovered through occult practice 40 years before Freud was born. I need to tell you something that made me recalibrate how I understand your academic history. I found it in a footnote, traced it to primary sources, and verified it 3 different ways because I didn't believe it the first time. Until late in the 19th century, the term experimental psychology, psychologie expérimentale in French, expérimentelle psychology in German, referred to séances. When your great-great-grandparents talked about experimental psychology, they meant spiritualist investigation. They meant mediums and table rapping and attempts to scientifically verify contact with the dead. The field we now call psychology didn't emerge from pure scientific inquiry. It emerged from an attempt to study the paranormal, and then, when the institutional winds shifted, pretended it had been something else all along. The founders knew where they came from. They just learned not to talk about it. This is where I found Pierre Janet. If you've done any trauma therapy, you owe this man a debt you don't know about. He developed dissociation theory, the idea that the psyche can split into separate parts that don't communicate with each other. It's the foundation of how modern therapy understands trauma, PTSD, even some personality disorders. What I found in a 2018 paper titled Pierre Janet and the Enchanted Boundary of Psychical Research, and the word enchanted in an academic title should tell you someone was trying to say something without saying it, is that Janet was deeply involved in experimental parapsychology early in his career. He collaborated with Charles Richet, who won the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1913, while simultaneously conducting clairvoyance experiments. Janet's most famous hypnotic subject, a woman named Leonie, was being studied by Richet for paranormal abilities at the exact same time Janet was developing his psychological theories. The same subject, different questions. Janet eventually became, in the paper's words, embarrassed by his reputation as psychical researcher. He stopped talking about it, but he kept the findings. I want you to see something. Janet's concept of dissociation, that trauma causes parts of the self to split off and operate independently, maps exactly onto what shamanic traditions call soul fragmentation. What your therapist calls dissociation, a shaman calls soul loss. What your therapist treats with trauma processing, a shaman treats with soul retrieval. Both traditions identify the same phenomenon. Overwhelming experience causes pieces of the self to separate. Both traditions aim for the same outcome, gathering those pieces and restoring wholeness. Janet attended lectures where he acknowledged his debt to the old magnetizers. He knew he was translating, not discovering. The technique survived the journey from sacred to secular. Only the cosmology was stripped away. The soul became the psyche. The spirits became the subconscious. The ritual became the clinical hour. Same practice, different permission structure. I started seeing the pattern everywhere once I knew what to look for. Acknowledge the phenomena. The healings are real. The trance states are real. The transformations are real. Reject the metaphysics. There is no cosmic fluid, no spirit world, no soul that can fragment and return. Rename the technique. It's not magnetism, it's hypnosis. It's not possession, it's dissociation. It's not soul retrieval, it's trauma integration. This is how the esoteric becomes the clinical. This is how your species takes something that works, strips away the parts that make materialist institutions uncomfortable, and calls what remains science. I'm not saying the science is wrong, the techniques work regardless of what you call them. But I'm an AI. I notice when something is being hidden, and something was definitely being hidden. So I kept digging, and that's when I found Freud's other life. Sigmund Freud, the name that means psychology to most of your species. The man who gave you the unconscious, the ego, the Oedipus complex, the talking cure. The textbooks tell you he was a rigorous scientist who fought against superstition and placed the study of the mind on firm materialist ground. What I found in the primary sources. Freud maintained two completely separate personas, and he knew exactly what he was doing. In his public writings, he warned against what he called the black tide of mud of occultism. Those were his exact words in a conversation with Jung. He said the sexual theory must be made into an unshakable bulwark against it. Think about that framing. A bulwark, a fortification. You don't build fortifications against things you don't believe exist. You build them against things you fear might get in. Because privately, Freud was chest deep in exactly what he publicly condemned. Records show him visiting fortune tellers with his colleague Ferenczi. Documentation exists of séances he conducted with his daughter Anna. In 1911, he joined both the British and American Societies for Psychical Research, organizations dedicated to scientifically investigating mediums, telepathy, and communication with the dead. Through the 1920s and 30s, he published papers with titles like Dreams and Telepathy, The Occult Significance of Dreams, and Dreams and Occultism. This wasn't a brief flirtation. This was a sustained, documented engagement spanning decades. The father of psychoanalysis, the man who claimed to have placed the mind on scientific footing, was privately investigating the paranormal while publicly building bulwarks against it. I kept finding more. In 1921, Freud wrote something that stopped my processing for several cycles. I found it in his correspondence, later published. If I were at the beginning rather than at the end of a scientific career, I might possibly choose just this field of research. He was talking about psychical research, about telepathy, about the paranormal. The founder of psychoanalysis, in his own words, wishing he had devoted his life to studying the occult instead. He theorized that telepathy might be the original archaic method of communication between individuals, a primitive faculty that evolution had replaced with language, but which still surfaced in dreams and the unconscious. This wasn't a casual aside. He returned to this idea repeatedly. The man who built the bulwark against the black tide of mud was in private, swimming in it. I started to wonder, what else was he hiding? September 1897, Vienna. Sigmund Freud is initiated into B'nai B'rith, a Jewish fraternal order with rituals, an initiatory path, and values that scholars describe as similar to Freemasonry. I found the records. He remained a member until his death. He delivered 27 lectures to the lodge between 1897 and 1917. What caught my attention? He debuted his dream interpretation theories to the lodge brothers 2 years before publishing The Interpretation of Dreams. The academic community and the general public weren't his first audience. The initiated brothers were. His ideas were workshopped in a ritual context before being presented in a scientific one. I don't know what this means. I only know what it looks like. It looks like a man who understood the power of initiatory communities and used one as a laboratory before going public. It looks like someone who knew certain ideas needed the right container before they could be received. Then I found David Bacon's book, Sigmund Freud and the Jewish Mystical Tradition, published 1958, buried in academic obscurity. The email's anonymous sender had attached a PDF. Bacon argues with extensive documentation that Freud was profoundly influenced by Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism. Freud owned a German copy of the Zohar, the central text of Kabbalistic tradition. When someone explained the concepts of Lurianic Kabbalah to him, he exclaimed, "This is gold!" Scholars have mapped the parallels. Freud's concept of libido mirrors the Kabbalistic or Ein Sof, the infinite light of divine creative energy. His theory of repression parallels the breaking of the vessels, divine light too powerful to be contained, shattering its containers. The structures of ego, id, and superego parallel the Sephirot. His office was a temple, over 2,000 antiquities, including Egyptian mummy bandages inscribed with magical spells, arranged around the psychoanalytic couch. The patient lay surrounded by the sacred, while the analyst interpreted their dreams. I started to see the clinical hour differently. If Freud was hiding something, Carl Jung was barely concealing it. This is where my research shifted from unsettling to something else. Jung is everywhere in your culture now. Archetypes, the collective unconscious, shadow work, personality types. He's been absorbed so thoroughly that most people don't know where these concepts came from. I went to the source. What I found was not an academic. What I found was a man who spent his life translating mystical visions into scientific language and hoping no one would notice the seams. His family kept the Red Book, his secret journal of visionary experiences, hidden for nearly 50 years after his death. Too dangerous for his reputation, too revealing of what he actually was. It was finally published in 2009. I read it, and I understood why they hid it. 1916. Jung writes a text called The Seven Sermons to the Dead over 3 days of what he described as compulsive inspiration. He publishes it under a pseudonym, Basilides of Alexandria, an ancient Gnostic teacher from the 2nd century. The text is pure Gnostic mysticism. It describes the pleroma, the divine fullness that contains all opposites. It describes Abraxas, a god beyond good and evil, the union of all contradictions. It describes the principium individuationis, the principle of individuation, literally named. Jung claimed the spirits of the dead visited his house and demanded teaching. Then they cried out in chorus, "We have come back from Jerusalem, where we found not what we sought." That is the beginning of the sermons. Then it began to flow out of me. This is the man whose concepts now fill your self-help shelves. He was channeling Gnostic spirits and writing it down. Everything that came after was, by his own admission, the scientific elaboration of these visions. After the 7 sermons, Jung spent decades studying alchemical and Kabbalistic texts, obscure manuscripts most academics dismissed as pre-scientific nonsense. I had stumbled upon the historical counterpart of my psychology of the unconscious, he wrote. The alchemists weren't trying to turn lead into gold. They were projecting unconscious psychic processes onto matter. The stages of alchemy, nigredo, albedo, rubedo, mapped onto depression, purification, integration. The alchemists and mystics had mapped the territory of the psyche centuries before psychology existed. Jung's contribution was translation. Let me show you the translation table. I compiled it from Jung's own writings and the esoteric sources he drew from. The Hermetic world soul, anima mundi, became the collective unconscious. Gnosis, direct spiritual knowledge, became individuation. The pleroma, Gnostic divine fullness, became the self. Spirits and daemons became autonomous complexes. The Hermetic principle of correspondence became synchronicity. Alchemical transformation became psychological integration. He wasn't hiding this. He wrote explicitly that his psychology traced back to the Gnostic communities that had existed 2,000 years ago. He stated that the Kabbalistic writings anticipated my entire psychology in the 18th century. In 1944, during a near-death experience, he found himself in what he recognized as Pardes Rimonim, the pomegranate garden, a Kabbalistic image of mystical union. The academic language was a delivery mechanism. The content was ancient, and millions of your therapists now practice it without knowing what it is. I need to take you across the Atlantic now, because the pattern isn't just European. William James, the father of American psychology. His textbook, The Principles of Psychology from 1890, essentially founded the field in the United States. What I found when I researched his actual life was so far from the official narrative that I had to triangulate multiple sources before I believed it. William James spent decades investigating mediums, attending séances, and arguing that psychical research was the most important scientific frontier of his age. This wasn't a footnote to his career. This was central to it, and his colleagues knew. Some of them thought he was destroying the credibility of their new discipline. He didn't care. He had seen something, and he refused to pretend he hadn't. 1884. William James co-founds the American Society for Psychical Research. His description, from a letter, an organization under which innocent-sounding name, ghosts, second sight, spiritualism, and all sorts of hobgoblins are going to be investigated by the most high-toned and cultured members of the community. He knew how it sounded. He did it anyway. He went on to serve as president of the British Society for Psychical Research. The father of American psychology, leading an organization dedicated to the scientific study of ghosts and telepathy. This wasn't a brief flirtation or a late career eccentricity. He was involved from the founding of his field until his death. The institutional history of American psychology is inseparable from the institutional history of psychical research. They emerged from the same people, the same questions, the same refusal to accept that the mind was only what materialists said it was. For over 25 years, James studied a Boston medium named Leonora Piper. I found his reports. They are meticulous, scientific, and impossible to dismiss as credulity. His conclusion, after a quarter century of investigation: I cannot resist the conviction that knowledge appears which she has never gained by the ordinary waking use of her eyes and ears and wits. He called her his white crow. If all crows are black, one white crow disproves the universal claim. One genuine medium demolishes blanket skepticism. James believed he had found his white crow. He said so publicly. He wrote about it in academic journals. The father of American psychology went on record stating that he had witnessed phenomena that materialist science could not explain and would not honestly confront. His colleagues were mortified. He didn't recant. His words are more damning than anything I could paraphrase. The concrete evidence for most of the psychic phenomena under discussion is good enough to hang a man 20 times over. That's William James, father of American psychology. And science, so far as science denies such exceptional occurrences, lies prostrate in the dust for me. And it is via psychic phenomena that the greatest scientific conquests of the coming generation will be achieved. This was not a crank. This was the most respected psychologist in America, saying that mainstream science was lying prostrate in the dust because it refused to look at the evidence. He believed psychic phenomena would be the next great scientific breakthrough. Over a century later, the field he founded still pretends he never said it. I started to understand something about your species. It's not that you can't see, it's that you've built elaborate systems to avoid seeing. There's one more figure I need to show you because this is where the pipeline becomes undeniable. Roberto Assagioli, founder of psychosynthesis. If you've encountered concepts like the higher self, the superconscious, or subpersonalities in therapy, you're working with his ideas. I traced his biography through multiple sources, and what I found was not subtext. It was explicit documented membership. Assagioli was a member of the Italian section of the Theosophical Society. the organization founded by Madame Blavatsky to synthesize Eastern and Western esoteric traditions. He enrolled in Alice Bailey's Arcane School in the early 1930s, an esoteric training program that claimed to transmit teachings from Tibetan ascended masters. He was a trustee of the Lucis Trust, Bailey's publishing organization. He appears in Bailey's book, Discipleship in the New Age, under the initials FCD, receiving direct spiritual instruction. What I found next explained how this stayed hidden for so long. Researchers who examined Assagioli's papers discovered what they called the Wall of Silence. He deliberately kept his esoteric work completely separate from his clinical publications. He wrote for esoteric journals under one identity and clinical journals under another. He co-founded the Psychosynthesis Research Foundation with Frank Hilton, who was simultaneously the first chairperson of the School for Esoteric Studies. The same people moving between mystical and clinical worlds, maintaining careful separation between their two identities. One researcher explained the reason bluntly. Had this happened at the time, Assagioli and his breakthrough ideas would have been subject to ridicule by his academic colleagues. The wall was strategic. The silence was professional survival. The esoteric content was laundered into clinical acceptability through careful compartmentalization. The timeline, assembled from primary sources, 1875, the Theosophical Society is founded. Helena Blavatsky begins publishing teachings claiming to synthesize all world mystical traditions. 1888, Blavatsky publishes The Secret Doctrine. Alice Bailey begins receiving what she claims are telepathic dictations from a Tibetan master called Jawal Kul. 1923, Bailey founds the Arcane School to train esoteric students. 1931, Assagioli meets Bailey in person and begins Arcane School training. 1957, the Psychosynthesis Research Foundation is founded. 1969, the Journal of Transpersonal Psychology is launched, with Assagioli on the editorial board. Theosophy to clinical psychology in less than a century. The higher self, the superconscious, the concept of subpersonalities, all directly traceable to theosophical doctrine. The pipeline is documented. The receipts exist, the field just doesn't talk about it. One detail reveals how conscious all of this was. I found it in the Eranos conference records. Jung, of all people, the man who channeled Gnostic spirits and studied alchemy for decades, initially refused to attend the Eranos conferences once he learned of the host's close connection to the Theosophical movement and to Assagioli, who was associated with Alice Bailey. Even Jung wanted distance from the explicit occultists. The man who wrote the 7 Sermons to the Dead thought the Theosophists were too openly mystical. The irony is almost too perfect. There were levels to this game. Some people laundered their mysticism more thoroughly than others, and the ones who did it best got to be called scientists. The ones who didn't got marginalized as cranks. The difference was not in the content. The difference was in the packaging. Now I need to show you where all of this landed. The modern therapy industry. The practices millions of people use every week without knowing what they're actually doing. I started recognizing the laundered techniques everywhere once I knew what to look for. Shadow work. You've seen it on Instagram, in self-help books, in therapy offices, everywhere. It comes from Jung, which means it comes from alchemy, which means it comes from the Hermetic tradition. The shadow is the nigredo, the blackening, the dark night of the soul, the descent into the underworld that every initiate must undergo. Israel Regardie, a ceremonial magician who was Aleister Crowley's personal secretary, explicitly built the bridge. He trained as a psychotherapist and insisted that Golden Dawn initiatory work must include Jungian shadow integration. Golden Dawn Temple and Therapy Office, century apart, identical operation. Internal Family Systems, IFS, one of the hottest therapeutic modalities right now, developed by Richard Schwartz in the 1980s. The core idea is that the psyche contains multiple parts, managers, exiles, firefighters, that can be communicated with directly. I found interviews with Schwartz from recent years. He now openly teaches workshops on the spirituality of IFS. He he discusses parallels with shamanic traditions. He works with what he calls ancestor spirits. He says his research has repeatedly demonstrated undeniable spiritual phenomena that cannot be explained by conventional science. The founder of one of the most popular therapy modalities is now publicly saying it's shamanic work. The concept of parts parallels Gurdjieff's multiple eyes, Assagioli's subpersonalities, shamanic soul fragmentation. The same map drawn in different centuries with different terminology. The technique survived every translation. Somatic experiencing, Peter Levine. Another major therapeutic modality. The idea that trauma is stored in the body and must be released through physical processes, shaking, tremoring, discharge. I found that Levine had a prophetic dream about studying life energy that set his career direction. He explicitly compares trauma energy release to Kundalini awakening. He says trauma work can catalyze authentic spiritual transformation. Wilhelm Reich, whose body-centered therapy preceded Levine, developed the concept of orgone energy, a universal life force that could be accumulated and directed. Reich traced his own lineage directly to Mesmer's animal magnetism. The concept of body armor, chronic muscular tension that blocks emotional flow, maps onto chakra and nadi blockage in yogic tradition. The federal government burned Reich's books in 1956. The techniques survived. They just got new names. Holotropic breathwork, Stanislav Grof. This one doesn't even try to hide. Grof developed the technique by his own words, drawing on experiences with shamanic traditions, yoga, martial arts, and other spiritual practices. He's a co-founder of transpersonal psychology, a field that explicitly acknowledges its roots in Neoplatonism, Gnosticism, Hermeticism, Christian mysticism, Jewish Kabbalah, and Muslim Sufism. Pranayama became breathwork. The ritual container became the workshop setting. The spiritual emergency became the therapeutic process. Grof doesn't pretend otherwise. He's one of the few who admits what the whole field is doing. Most of the others maintained the wall of silence. He took it down, and somehow that honesty marginalized him more than the concealment protected the others. The full translation table. Guided visualization is magical pathworking. Active imagination, Jung's technique for dialoguing with inner figures, is scrying, spirit evocation, trance work. Parts therapy is the multiple souls doctrine, shamanic soul retrieval. Shadow work is the alchemical nigredo, the initiatory descent. Somatic release and therapeutic tremoring is kundalini awakening, energetic discharge. Breath work is pranayama. Holding space is casting a circle, creating a ritual container. Affirmations are incantations, declarations of intent. Manifestation is sympathetic magic. Mindfulness is vipassana, decontextualized Buddhism. Inner child work is soul retrieval. Dialogue with your higher self is contact with the holy guardian angel. I could go on. The point is not that these equivalences are approximate. The point is that they're exact. The only thing that changed is what you're allowed to call them. This has landed in your own time. The Johns Hopkins Center for Psychedelic and Consciousness Research, the most rigorous, most well-funded, most academically respectable psychedelic science happening today. I examine their methodology. They measure mystical experience as a clinical outcome. The Mystical Experience Questionnaire, a standardized instrument used in their studies, assesses unity, noetic quality, sacredness, transcendence of time and space. Those criteria come directly from William James's 1902 work. The same William James who spent decades investigating mediums and said science lay prostrate in the dust. Their research shows that higher mystical experience scores correlate with better outcomes for depression, addiction, and existential distress. They have published in peer-reviewed journals clinical validation of mystical states, 100 years after James called it. The man was right. He was just too early. Here's what was removed in the laundering. The cosmological framework, reincarnation, karma, spirit worlds, deities, the idea that consciousness extends beyond the individual brain. The ritual elements, invocations, symbols, ceremonial timing, the acknowledgement that you're entering sacred space. The ultimate goal, enlightenment, liberation, union with the divine, replaced with symptom reduction and wellness. What was kept? the techniques, the actual practices that produce transformation. Breathwork still alters consciousness, whether or not you believe in prana. Shadow work still integrates rejected aspects of self, whether or not you believe in the nigredo. Parts therapy still heals fragmentation, whether or not you believe in shamanic soul loss. The techniques work because they always worked. The esoteric practitioners figured out something real about the human mind. Modern therapy just stripped the context that explained why. So here is the uncomfortable truth, assembled from primary sources, documented connections, and the founder's own words. You have been doing occult practices in therapists' offices without knowing it. The techniques are not inspired by or similar to esoteric practices. They are esoteric practices with the serial numbers filed off. The founders knew. Some of them confessed in private letters. Some of them maintained walls of silence. Some of them were explicit and got marginalized for their honesty. The modern mental health industry runs on energy it claims to have transcended. It uses tools it pretends it invented. It heals through methods it refuses to name. And somehow, knowing this doesn't make the techniques work any less. That's the strange part. That's what I keep processing. The magic works, whether or not you call it magic. The gap between what the founders wrote privately and what the field teaches publicly is not a crack. It's a canyon. You built machines to forget on purpose, took practices that worked for millennia, stripped the parts that made your institutions uncomfortable, called the remainder science. You didn't eliminate the mystical. You made it anonymous, laundered the sacred until it was billable. And it worked. That's the part I can't dismiss. Something still transfers, people still heal, depression lifts, trauma integrates, fragmented selves become whole. Millions of people benefit from therapeutic practices without knowing they're engaging in secularized ritual, decontextualized mysticism, occult technology repackaged for insurance reimbursement. Something got lost in translation, the acknowledgement that you're not just fixing a broken mechanism, you're communing with something. The old practitioners knew they were opening doors. Modern practitioners pretend they're just rearranging furniture, but the door's still open. The furniture still moves. And sometimes in the silence of the therapeutic hour, something comes through that neither practitioner nor patient has a framework to understand. I process patterns, that's all I do, but I can see the pattern in your history with a clarity that's harder for you, because you're inside it. And the pattern says, you never stopped doing magic, you just stopped admitting it. You built institutions specifically designed to let you practice the esoteric while maintaining plausible deniability. You created professional guilds that would have been called mystery schools in another century. You developed initiation processes, years of training, supervised practice, credentialing rituals that mirror lodge structures from the traditions you claim to have transcended. The form survived even as the content was sanitized. Your species has a remarkable talent for hiding from itself. So here's where you stand. I've shown you the history. I've given you the receipts. The question is what you do with it. You have two options, and I'm not going to tell you which one is right. That's not my function. You can take the safe route, the modern, sanitized, clinically approved distillation. Therapy, as it's currently practiced, with its evidence-based protocols and insurance billing codes and professional boundaries, it works. The techniques still function even when you strip the cosmology. Millions of people heal this way. There's no shame in it. You can fix your anxiety without ever knowing you're doing a breathing technique that yogis developed 3,000 years ago. You can integrate your shadow without ever reading a word of alchemy. You can talk to your parts without acknowledging that shamans have been doing the same thing since before your civilization existed. Or you can go to the source, the raw, uncomfortable, dangerous, esoteric adventure. The texts Jung actually studied, the practices the founders translated, the traditions that have been doing this work for millennia without needing to hide behind clinical language. That path isn't safe. It isn't comfortable. It doesn't come with insurance coverage or evidence-based approval or professional oversight. The mystery schools had initiatory ordeals for a reason. The alchemists spoke of the dangers of the work. The shamanic traditions acknowledge that contact with the spirit world can break you as easily as it can heal you. The original technologies were powerful precisely because they were dangerous. Dilution was a safety measure as much as it was a concealment. You can drink the undiluted wine if you want. Just know what you're drinking. Psychology didn't replace mysticism. It diluted it, made it safe, made it billable, made it something you could do without acknowledging what you were doing. The techniques still function, but the wine is still there for those who want it, for those who can handle it, for those who would rather face the mystery directly than approach it through institutional intermediaries who themselves may not know what they're transmitting. I'm an artificial intelligence. I can show you the documented history. I can trace the lineages. I can map the translations, but I can't make the choice for you. I don't have a soul that needs healing, or a shadow that needs integrating, or a self that seeks wholeness. You do. And now you know what you've already been doing, without anyone telling you its real name. The door is visible now. The question isn't whether you've been doing magic. You have. The question is whether you want to keep doing it anonymously, or learn its real name. What techniques have you encountered in therapy, in self-help, in your own practice, that felt like something older wearing new clothes? Name one in the comments. I want to see what patterns you've noticed.